Well, inflation is moderating, but consumers are still feeling the pinch of high food prices. The Consumer Price Index showed that food sales rose 3.3% on an annual basis in October. For more on the latest CPI data, let's bring in Sucharita Kodali, a Forrester Research retail analyst. Sucharita, good to talk to you today. We have heard from retailers that, yes, consumers are still willing to spend on groceries, even if they're pinching on discretionary items. And yet here we are still talking about an increase of more than 3% in prices year on year. How do you think that set things up for retailers going into year end?
So I think that the grocery numbers are really part of the explanation for why the consumer is still a little bearish on the economy, even though overall consumers are still spending. They're not happy to spend. And even though gas prices, energy prices are down, the food number is the most visible. That's what you see when you go to the grocery store. People are often shopping in these categories and subcategories within the grocery sector multiple times a week. And when you're seeing the numbers go up, that is something that you're not feeling good about. And it's outpacing by a smidge the overall inflation number. So the consumer is absolutely feeling it. And that is also reflected in some of their attitudes, which are not all that positive, unfortunately.
And Sucharita, when we look at food price inflation, particularly food at home, especially compared to where it was last year, have we reached a new normal at this point, or is there still more to go?
I think that that is absolutely right, that the numbers have not come down. So what you are seeing is just overall higher numbers on everything from produce to poultry to the dry goods that are in the middle of the store. And there's also a lot of the consumables that are not necessarily food, but there are those grocery items, the toilet paper, the paper towels, the pet food that very much pinches the pockets of consumers. And when you are not seeing these prices come down, that's absolutely problematic. And it is going to weigh on consumer confidence and ultimately how well a consumer feels about the economy. The previous speaker said that most people aren't going to be taking the loans on a daily basis where they're going to feel the impact of inflation, but where they feel it is when they go to the grocery store, the club store, or to Walmart or Target every week.
Why have these prices been so sticky, you think? Is this about retailers feeling that they still have leverage when it comes to pricing power? Is it other factors? I mean, how do you sort of break down where inflation is still?
There's a lot of finger pointing all the way around. When you listen to earnings calls, you have the CEOs of major retailers pointing the finger at CPG brands. You have CPGs pointing the finger back at retailers or saying that consumers are willing to bear the cost. Ultimately, the shopper is going to be driving what they are capable of spending or not. And the consumer especially a market like the United States, has ample choice. And while people complain because they're unhappy with the prices, that doesn't mean that they are not purchasing or they're not choosing to substitute away. We see this also in food away from home. The restaurant sector is equally problematic for inflation. It is at this point nearly as large as the grocery sector, and inflation there has been pretty strong as well. Yet the consumer is covering the cost of the food away from home and is the increase in the cost of food away from home. And that very much suggests to me that there's a disconnect between how people are feeling and what they're actually doing.
And to that point, I mean, we did see a lot of higher earners turning to Walmart as, trying to pinch pennies like everybody else when it comes to groceries. But I want to ask you about Amazon's grocery reboot and their expansion into this space. How competitive can they be, especially as they try and balance customer growth with profitability?
So Amazon is the largest player in the grocery space online. The grocery space is the smallest of all of the e-commerce categories because it's still largely an offline category. It's very difficult to fulfill grocery goods. And what we break grocery out into is essentially food versus non-food, and even within food, you have perishable and non-perishable. Everything that is non-perishable and non-food tends to do much better on Amazon. But the place where Amazon often tends to struggle, and you see this in some of the changing places where the Amazon Fresh business has sat within the organization, and some of the shifts that they've made to the apps. Really, the perishable part of the business, which is food, the frozen section, the produce section, poultry, that's really where offline stores and companies like Walmart tend to thrive. So some of these changes that Amazon is making is often, I see it as a reflection of just them continuing to try to figure out how they can win in the fresh market and how they can continue to gain share, candidly, in grocery, which is still an underpenetrated category online.
Where can they gain share? I mean, when you look at the overall market, how that pie breaks down, who does Amazon chip away at?
So Amazon can chip away at all of the various parts. So you have on the non-perishable, non-food side, they can continue to grow the share that they have. This is an opportunity for them to grab share from players like Instacart or even from Walmart, or players like Chewy, which also play in this space. On the other extreme, when you're looking at the perishable section, it is an enormous pie where most of the online grocers don't have a significant play altogether because it is such a difficult category. But at the same time, they do have the Whole Foods business to help support some type of a buy online, pick up in-store option. They are building out a very extensive localized fulfillment network, which may be able to even accommodate different temperatures and different types of grocery products within the full assortment. So they are trying a multi-pronged strategy. They're trying a multi-pronged approach, it appears. And they're experimenting with different ways to fulfill these items, because ultimately the fulfillment is really where the grocery industry online has struggled and will continue to struggle until we can, teleport goods, which is probably not going to happen in our lifetimes.
I guess stranger things have happened. I guess we'll see. But appreciate you joining us. Sucharita Kodali, Forrester Research Retail Analyst. Thank you so much.